Tap in.
Hi, welcome. I'm Carita Parks, and this is another side of the story where I'll be having in-depth conversations with athletes and influencers in sports. In light of some breaking news this week, I am joined by a very good friend of mine who also happens to be ESPN's Titans reporter, Mr. Turron Davenport.
Hey, what's going on? Appreciate you having me on. It's something we've wanted to make happen for a while, so this is good.
Of course. And I've never had you in my hot seat, so this is a little different. I'm actually going to interview you today.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so Turron, you are in the epicenter of the NFL's first COVID-19 outbreak. And I know that as the season started, it was a little bit inevitable that there would be some positive tests. But now that it's an actual reality, it's a completely different story. So can you just walk us through a timeline of how the events unfolded this week, since you're there on the ground in Tennessee covering this team on a daily basis?
Yeah, well, with this whole situation, it's definitely a little bit different. One of the things I kind of count my blessing on is just, well, obviously before everything else, I count my blessings that I have the position, but I opted out of tier 2, whereas we were going to get daily testing at the facility. There's a trailer outside of the facility within that parking lot, and you go in there and they do the POC, point of contact swab, which is just kind of swirl around your nostrils. It tickles like crazy.
I heard it hurts, but okay.
No, that one doesn't hurt. Now, when they stab the back of your skull, yeah, that one I would imagine is painful. I haven't had to be subject to that, but that's what we were doing. I'm glad I opted out, because if I hadn't opted out, there's been a total of, as of today, Saturday, there's been a total of 18 positive tests that have flown through that same trailer. So I feel fortunate that I opted out and I don't have to be exposed to that. But really, they're not trying to place any blame. Okay. But the first positive test that came, as far as within this cluster, that came on September 24th when the Titans signed a defensive back to their practice squad by the name of Greg Maben. And he was in the building as of the 21st. The 24th, he had a positive test. Mike Vrabel told us that he was removed from the building and protocols were initiated. So that's kind of the first one within the cluster. But then you have Shane Bowen on Saturday morning. He tested positive, and he was removed from the travel list, and he didn't go to Minnesota with the Titans for that game. And it ended up Mike Vrabel had to call the defense, and they had one of the other coaches, the special teams coach, Craig Aukerman, get a headset, and he kind of balanced things out as far as on the offensive side of things, even though Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator, but just the head coaching side of things that are required, while Vrabel was focusing on the defense with the guys when they came off the field. So you had that. And then Monday, that's when it was revealed that Shane Bowen had tested positive, and Vrabel spoke to us about it. And everything seemed like, okay, it was still going to be business as usual, right, but just with extra precaution. Then Tuesday hit, and that's when stuff just kind of really exploded. That was when you had the 8 personnel people, including 3 players, Daquan Jones, Tommy Hudson, and Bo Brinkley, were placed on the COVID reserve list. And at the same time, it was 5 additional unnamed team personnel folks, so a total of 8. And then Wednesday, it got a little bit worse with Kamale Correa being placed on COVID reserve. And that was when everything started to come into play as far as the game probably being moved from Sunday to Monday or Tuesday. And it just continued to snowball. On Thursday, you had Christian Fulton. He was placed on COVID reserve. Mm-hmm. And there was another team personnel person as well. So what ended up happening was they moved the game back from to week 7. And that was supposedly that. In this whole time, the Vikings are dealing with stuff too. They shut their facility down on Wednesday or on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday they were able to go back in there. But that's when they had to do the POC testing along with the stab the back of your brain one, the PRC testing. And they had to submit negative tests on both of those counts. The Vikings Titans game or Texans game is still it's going to happen
Right.
tomorrow. So that's a positive thing. But this Titans Bills game is definitely in question because you had more tests come out. Because on Thursday you had 2 more tests, and
Yeah.
then Friday another positive. Then today on Saturday you have the 1 positive for a player and 1 for team personnel, which gives us a total of 18. So it's been quite a situation. The NFLPA and NFL had executives go to Nashville, come here and inspect the situation, and that's pretty much where we are. And then obviously the Cam Newton news, which is unbelievable.
Exactly.
And just coincidentally, the team that the Patriots are facing and the Chiefs had their backup quarterback or their practice squad one, Jordan Ta'amu, test positive.
Yeah, so it's been a domino effect, and as you mentioned, it's now spread to some other teams. It's something I want to follow up on. You mentioned a couple of players who tested positive. Are there some significant players that have tested positive that would really have an impact on the team's performance?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Adam Humphries he leads the team in targets. He has 15 targets. He's caught 76% of them, which means that he's a guy that is a reliable option for quarterbacks.
Right.
Ryan Tannehill likes to target him. So you take him out of the picture, that's significant. Then at the same time, Daquan Jones is one of their starting defensive tackles. He's a guy that really helps the team in run defense. Christian Fulton, a rookie that I really like.
Yeah.
He is on the COVID reserve list. He was their top nickel defender. As a matter of fact, he has one of their 3 sacks, and he also has an interception. So he's posted significant numbers just as far as numbers and significant measurables that you use when you look at a game. Even further, Bo Brinkley, a lot of people just say, oh, he's a long snapper, no problem. If there's one thing about the Titans that you never have to worry about is that battery from long snapper to punter, and then extended from long snapper to punter / holder for the field goal kicker. You never have issues from that perspective. So if they don't have him, that's definitely harmful to them. We're waiting to see who the next player is, and hopefully for the Titans' sake, it's not someone else that's significant.
Right, because those were the worries, I think, of a lot of NFL players before the season started is what if someone significant comes down with COVID-19? And in the New England situation, I would consider Cam Newton pretty significant.
Without a doubt.
And then in light of that, since we are talking a little bit about how it'll impact the team, the Titans were 3-0 before this happened. They had a lot of good momentum. I think if you skip one game, like the Steelers, that got rescheduled, but then if you're in a situation where you can't play the Bills game, do you think that this situation will take away some of the momentum that they had when they get back on the field?
I think it will somewhat, but one of the things that Coach Vrabel always tells me, because I ask him about momentum and just what's surrounding that an awful lot. And he always says you build momentum throughout the week. He's not really huge on carrying it from week to week. Okay. But, I mean, listen, you're 3-0, you're winning close games. I understand what he's saying about building it throughout the week, but I think it carries over. Yeah. And I think a 3-0 team is going to have a lot more confidence than a 1-2 team or even a 2-1 team. So I feel like it does carry over. I think it's going to be really difficult for them to start strong again, especially against a team like the Bills. Yeah. And they're going to have to do it because the Bills, they're a team that they don't do as well, or actually they do better in the first half as opposed to the second half. So your chance to really jump up on them is by having a good start.
Yeah, so that'll definitely be something to keep an eye on because like you said, I do believe too, momentum does carry on somewhat from week to week. And this isn't just about the players getting sick. It's also like mentally taxing because for those who get sick, but then also as you're waiting around hoping that, you don't test positive as well. So something else I want to ask you about, Turron, you have been talking to Coach Vrabel and the players since this occurred, what is their mindset right now?
Yeah, initially it was just we're going to be prepared to play whenever we have to. And that's still been the mindset. But as more tests continue to roll in, it really starts to hit these guys that, man, this is real.
Yeah.
And they've always had that understanding. It's like you always know a pan is hot, right? But you don't realize how hot it is until you touch it. And I think
That's
right now, yeah, I mean, right now with these multiple tests that are just coming in every day, they're really seeing how real the situation is. And they're concerned. They're concerned about their family. A lot of them have newborns or even toddlers. Some have older family members so that are within close proximity to them. I mean, hopefully we all have older family members, but
right.
You know, some have those that are more exposed than others. So that's kind of my point there. Yeah. But it's not business as usual. As much as they try to say it is, it's not, and they really understand that now.
Yeah, I think like you said, in the beginning of the week, you could think more like, okay, it's business as usual. But then as the week has gone on, you know, it's completely changed. And I don't know, you mentioned like the NFL and the NFLPA were in town. Are you aware at all of like exactly what that entails?
I'm not. I know Dr. Sills, he's one of the leading doctors for the league that's dealing with all of this. He actually lives in Nashville. So they've always technically had someone in town, but you have other officials coming in. I really believe that what they're doing is checking for negligence, trying to make sure that all procedures are being followed. And that's pretty much where they are. One thing that I thought was really interesting is the league has sent a memo for the facility to be completely shut down, and it prohibited them from having any in-person activities.
Right.
Yet they allowed Titans players that were in need of treatment to go into the building and get treated by the athletic trainers. They all had to have masks on, and it was a limit of up to 4 in a room at a time. So I just thought that was interesting because you had an approval for something that contradicts the specific reaction to the series of tests. And now, from what I understand, there are no players going in for treatment or anything like that. From what I've been told, the facility is just completely closed, with the exception of the drive-through testing. So the guys could go in, they punch in a survey on their phone, answer the general questions, the COVID questions, as far as having a fever, being in contact, et cetera, and then they have drive-through testing. So that, from my understanding, is the only access to the facility.
Yeah, and I think that's smart, just shutting it down until further notice. And have you heard anything about when they're actually open? Because originally it was today, but that was in the beginning of the week when you didn't have as many positives. Has there been any update on when the Titans will be able to return?
Yeah, on Thursday, Mike Vrabel was hoping that they could get in there by Monday. They were going to continue tests through Monday. But with these other tests coming out, I would imagine Monday is a bit of a stretch, possibly Tuesday. I think best case scenario will be Wednesday, them getting back in the facility. And really, you have to look at the incubation period that this virus tends to have. Everyone looks at the 5-day period, but it's actually up to 14 days.
And that's what I've always heard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, standard people that work, if they go someplace and come back, they have to quarantine for 14 days before going to work.
Yeah.
So I would imagine something along those lines would be required for the Titans players. One of the things, or players, period, one of the things that I think is good is the access to the facility from, I would say, Wednesday on has been basically minimized to just eliminate it. So if you look at the 5-day window, you got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
But again, it's up to. So I think really what's going to determine that and this is something that Dr. Sills had also said, the next few days is really what's going to determine that. Saturday, getting these 3 more tests was terrible for that goal of getting in there on Monday or even Tuesday.
Right.
But if Sunday and Monday they could go through without having a positive test, then I think Wednesday is an option. And you also have to look at the Vikings because remember, they played the Titans in week 3. And even though Shane Bowen didn't make the trip, there's obviously contact tracing to a coach who is actually not in charge, but calls the defensive plays. So he is involved with all of the defense.
Yeah. Well, it'll definitely be something to keep an eye on. I do hope that it gets a little bit under control. And you mentioned this and alluded to it, but I want to actually ask you directly. When there is an outbreak like this, the immediate thought of fans or other people is someone broke the rules, someone broke protocol. Can you shed some light on that perception?
Yeah, I really don't think it's an obvious thing that someone broke the rules.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it, I could go to a gas station, pump my gas, and catch the virus.
Sure can.
Now, there are things that you can do, right? You could put a glove on and grab the pump that way and pump your gas and punch the buttons on the gas thing, but that's one example. It's not like these guys, with the exception of one player, and that news came out last month, it's not like these guys are out partying. They're not at casinos. They're not running up and down Broadway having that type of fun. They're not doing these things. So you can't really say they've been negligent. And then a lot of people like to point to they had a coach test positive before they went.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, okay, well, the Titans shouldn't even have boarded the plane and went to Minnesota. That's not necessarily true. And they didn't break protocol or procedures by doing that. There wasn't anything in place for how to handle if it happens the day before a game.
Right.
Typically on game day, on Sunday specifically, they don't test. So there's contact tracing that you're supposed to do, but I don't think the Titans specifically broke protocol or procedure by going to Minnesota and playing that game. And again, Shane Bowen was quarantined. He was not allowed to take the trip. They did all their contact tracing as early as Saturday morning. And some of the contact tracing looped over with coaches on the Titans that spoke to coaches on the Vikings. And that's something that's going to be more likely to happen because coaches, and you've been at games on the field and you've seen it, coaches talk to coaches for a bit more time than players talk to other players. You could see your homie that you went to college with and, hey, what's up, man? Shake hands and then keep it moving. According to the CDC, the high transmission rate is when you're within 6 feet of someone for a total of 15 minutes or more. You're not doing that on the field or even pregame.
No. And I mean, the reality is it's a virus. It's a much more serious virus, but viruses spread like this all the time. It's just because it's COVID and it's a little bit more deadlier. It's getting a lot of attention, but it's the same way the common cold or a stomach virus passes. It could be anything. And I mean, in the MLB, we saw people partying, but so far in the NFL, we haven't heard of anything like that or anyone really breaking the protocol. Except
for the Raiders. That was the one thing. The Raiders went to a charity foundation event that tight end Darren Waller had last week. And that was, or it may have been the week before, recently, within the last week and a half, I'll say it that way. And that was something that the NFL has actually examined, and they may take action regarding to that. But to your point, for the most part, these guys aren't out there in excess. So that's something you have to look at.
Because you still have to navigate life, to the best of your ability, and they have to go to work. So, Turron, now that this has spread to other teams, we don't know how bad it's going to be just yet. Hopefully, we don't have another outbreak. But how do you think the NFL is going to handle this moving forward now that it's a little bit more real?
One of the things that I do like is they've been willing to adapt. They introduced new protocols as far as re-entering the building. They reiterated that if you miss a test without authorization, that's a $50,000 fine. The second time, it's a suspension, and you're losing a game check. A lot of these guys, $50,000, that's not their game check. It's much more.
Oh, yeah.
So it's more significant. And then the third time, it could be additional fines and suspensions, and it just continues to snowball. They reiterated that fact. And then also, if you miss during the bye week, if you miss a test, you have to submit 5 PRC, which is, again, the full nasal test, and then
Let
you
me
have
stop
to.
you really quick there. The PRC, I know you're saying it's a full nasal test, but what are the differences between the two tests? Because some people don't know.
Okay, so the PRC is a test. That's the one, for those of you that have seen on the news, where they take the long Q-tip and they stick it in the nostril, and it literally, I jokingly say, it stabs the back of your skull, but
it does.
It's a more inclusive test, and for that reason, it takes a little bit more to get those results back. The POC test, that's just a general swab, and that gives you results in 20 minutes.
Okay.
So that's the main difference. It's not as inclusive, and the results come quicker. But these are tests where you've seen a false negative or false positive. So again, the accuracy and time frame is a little bit different for PRC.
All right. Well, that was good insight, and I wanted to get it straight from someone there on the ground in Nashville. I do want to transition our conversation, but before I do that, is there anything else in light of the Titans COVID-19 outbreak that you think the audience should know?
Not really. We've covered most of it, and they're not looking to blame anyone. That's not the case at all. They're just looking to get it minimized and keep it from happening again. And I think you should look at the Marlins. That's a team that had an outbreak, and look, they're still in the playoffs. So those of you that are Titans fans, it's not doomsday. Get off the bridge. You don't have to jump. Live to see another day, and that could end up seeing your Titans advance into the postseason.
So it sounds like those are still your expectations.
I'm not going to say expectations, because this whole situation is just crazy. I don't think you could accurately have an expectation right now. But yeah, I mean, going into the season, I for sure thought, I was making plans to work in January and maybe into February, but at least in January.
Yes, you still might. So like you said,
Right.
We don't know. Well, let's get over to a little bit more of who you are, Turron, because you have a very interesting story. You know, I kind of know the middle of your journey, but you've had a long journey and a climb to ESPN, and it's been very inspirational for a lot of people because you've literally worked your way to the top. So can you tell us more about how you got to ESPN?
Yeah, well, really, it started for me. I always loved football, and I played the game for quite some time. Initially, I was at Delaware State University, which obviously Delaware State, it's in Delaware. It's at that time what they called a D1 AA school. Now they call it FCS. And I was there, then transferred to Cheney University, a Division II school, and played ball there. Did pretty well, ended up getting a few looks from Canadian teams, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Hamilton Tiger Cats, and got looks from arena teams as well, the New York Dragons, New York Dragons, and then New Jersey Gladiators, who have gone on to become Las Vegas Gladiators. I don't know if they're in existence anymore. I mean, I'm an oldie but goodie, so
we'll have to look that. We'll have to Google it.
Yeah, Google that one.
Right.
But yeah, so those things didn't work out. I ended up with a marketing degree and not really sure what I was going to do. So I had a merchandising position with Sports Authority, and I did that. But at the same time, I did football camps, and that's when I kind of started to see, hey, my ability to discuss this game, it's able to happen with guys who have actually played it professionally, because through those camps we interacted with different guys on the Eagles and some of the other teams, for which we did football camps for. And I remember Colin Kaepernick. He was I really wanted to do a camp with him, and I reached out to his marketing people and to his agents. I made a connection, and the guy that I was working with, he didn't like flying, so a football camp in California wasn't going to happen because I for sure wasn't going to drive cross country. He wasn't going to do it either. So it was still a good contact.
Right.
And just in all of that, I saw a Bleacher Report sell to Time Warner, I believe it was, for like $30 million. And I said, man, if these guys, because at that time it was a fan site, and a lot of the guys didn't really have experience playing, and Bleacher Report has come a long way from where it was at that point. I'll put it that way. So I said, if these guys can do it, I know for a fact I can. So I dove into it. I created my own site. I taught myself how to do it on Front Page. The site was called Press Coverage Sports. And that was that. I focused on the 49ers. I had a couple of my teammates focus on other teams, the Steelers, Cowboys, and the Falcons. So we had a pretty good outreach. And it ended up Colin Kaepernick's first start against the Chicago Bears. I did an article about that, just reviewing it, and I outlined just the way that they used him really well and how he excelled. His agent saw it, sent it to him. He put it on his Facebook page. And then that's when I first got connected with a site called Golden Bay Sports. It was by FanSided. And Bay Sportsnet actually saw me as well after I wrote for Golden Bay for a little bit. And that was when I was first credentialed at a game. And at that time,
the Facebook post.
It all dated back to the Facebook post. Yeah, that's what gave me exposure in the Bay Area. So Golden Bay had me doing work for them, but other outlets had known of me because of that post. So really, Colin Kaepernick indirectly gave me my first main exposure. So I always feel indebted to him, and that's why a lot of times you won't see me have too many back and forths with people. But one thing I won't tolerate is Colin Kaepernick slander. I feel like he's the reason why I'm at this point.
Right.
So I was flying back and forth to San Francisco. I also worked a retail job, and a part of that job was outfitting U.S. Airways. And I had a really good friend who worked for American Airlines. So I'm getting buddy passes to fly back and forth. It was affordable, but that got old. So then I said to myself, I'm going to come closer to where I live. And I had the option to either, in my mind, I had the option to either cover the Ravens or the Eagles. And I said, well, the Eagles are saturated. Let's go for the Ravens. So initially
people know you were based in Philly. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. I was based in Philly at the time when I was going to San Francisco. And initially I was doing that actually for a group that you also have done work for, and that's Pro Players Insiders. And that's actually how we met, as a matter of fact, at one of the draft functions. I believe that was 2015 when the draft was in New York. But that blossomed into a bigger opportunity when I was able to get with a Black-owned newspaper in Baltimore called the Baltimore Times. I did that for 2 years, continued to do my draft stuff. I actually connected with Emory Hunt's group, Football Game Plan, and did a lot of things with them. So I became noticed on the draft circuit as well. And one of the USA Today, they had a network called The Wire, and they were branching into all of the NFL cities, so to speak, trying to follow the model that was set by NFL Nation, coincidentally, who I write for now. They opened their Jets page, and they had me do a lot of draft stuff. So I did that. And then I reached out to him like, hey, have you thought about doing a Ravens one? And he said, well, funny you mentioned that. We have, but the next one we're going to do is in Philly. And I just said, oh, this would be crazy. And it turned out that they had me start that one. That was actually my first quotation mark full-time paying position, doing media. It didn't pay enough to quit my other job, but it supplemented it very well, So I did that. In that process, 2017, we did the book, Carson Wentz Soaring with the Eagles, something that, you helped me with.
Yeah.
Then in addition to that, we had the other book that came out on the Eagles, their Super Bowl season, just outlined everything from that season. And so that was my fourth book, because I also did two with Football Game Plan, a two-part series, Football Love Story, and What Did Football Teach Me? So it just was a series of just working my way through it. As you know, that book, the Carson Wentz one, that was written primarily on the train, going back and forth from, outside of Center City into Center City. So that's how that one happened. 2017 it was a great year, and I got a random email from ESPN saying, "Hey, would you be interested in one of our NFL Nation positions?" And obviously, I said yes.
Yeah.
We did a couple phone interviews. Then they shot me an email, "Hey, would you be willing to come up to Bristol next week?" And absolutely. So I flew up there on a Thursday, had dinner. They asked me different ideas. It's funny that one of the things they asked was, why should they hire me? And I said, you buy one, you get two free. And basically with that, I told, because they were hiring me to do digital, but I explained to them that I'm very well versed in video work as well as radio work, podcasting especially, because when I was in Baltimore, while covering the Ravens, not in Baltimore, but going back and forth there, I had taught myself how to produce a podcast. I bought the mixing desk, I connected it to one of the online platforms, and I got the mic. I had a table set up in my basement, had all that sitting there. Would take my voice recorder and plug that into my laptop, upload that to the program. So I was able to, and I went and got sponsors. I went and I bought beats so I could have an intro and outro without worrying about having to be hit with rights usage. And I just made that happen and showed myself how to produce a show. It was a 30 to 45-minute show. People really dug it. And then at the same time, I was doing video stuff and honing my skills with Emory for Football Game Plan. Yeah. So I told them, you buy one, you get two free, and it's all self-made. And they seem to love that. Then the following day, interviewed from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. They really liked it. And a month later, position was offered, and here we are.
Here you are. Couple things that you said. You taught yourself quite a bit throughout your journey, which, I find interesting. But then also, we see the end, but it was a long road.
Oh, yeah.
For you to get to where you are. And it literally, your life literally changed like that. I mean, you said it very eloquently, but I know that one minute you were in Philly, the next minute you were in Nashville.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the other things that I will say, because before I got that job offer, as a matter of fact, that March, I got an invitation to apply for one of the Jets, the team reporter's jobs with the Jets. And I thought for sure I was getting that. I had one of my recommendations was Pat Kerwin, who used to be a GM for the Jets. He's the one that drafted Keyshawn Johnson and signed Wayne Corbett. So he definitely holds a lot of water with that organization. I went up there and I did the interview. I know I knocked it out the box, and they were very interested. Ended up going to a young lady who had just graduated from Colorado State, and she's still with the group, right? But the thing is, at that point, I don't know if you remember, but that was like a really down point. I was frustrated. And I didn't think that anything else would happen, but I kept my head down and just kept working. And I just said, man, I love doing it too much. I'm going to continue to do both things. And while I was with USA Today, they did not pay for travel. They didn't require it. They don't even require you to go to home games. But with that money that I made from USA Today, in addition to what I had from my other job, I paid to travel to every game. And we're talking about a trip to Seattle, multiple ones to Seattle, to LA. We're talking about real trips, not just paying myself to drive up 95 to MetLife Stadium. Like it was real. And I mean, it was just a hustle. And I just felt like there wasn't going to be anything that was going to stop me. And then just having good people in the corner, definitely helped as well. So yeah, you're right. It did change from 2012 to 2018 was really just a gradual growth.
Yeah.
And then 18, I got to where I wanted to be. There's still other things that I want to do. I want to continue to ascend, but yeah, it took a lot of dedication, growth. Um, you name the adjective, it took it.
Yeah. And like I said, you've inspired a lot of people. So I thought it was really important for them to hear that. So, one other thing, if you know TD, he always is bringing the bow tie swag. Fashion is one of the things that you love. So tell us how you got into fashion.
Yeah, well, I worked in the industry. That was actually my side job, selling clothes and just doing consulting, what they call wardrobe consulting. That's how I got into it, and I just stayed with it and always loved it. And it's something I don't work in the industry, but I definitely stay involved and up to date.
And what goes into a game day outfit for you? Because your game day outfits are very well thought out. You just do
What
it.
goes
It's
into it?
natural.
I'm not going to say it's natural. I got the help of, little rascals, my little girls. They always help me. Um, I have a 12 and 14-year-old. I also talk to my 21-year-old. Well, she's 22 now. She helps me with it. And I've even text pictures to my 18-year-old who's back in Philly. I've texted her pictures, to help me pick stuff out. Because, let's face the facts. Women, you guys know the deal, right? You know what looks nice and you know what doesn't. I admittedly will still go with stuff that a lady would say, that my girls would say doesn't look good. I'll still go with it. For some reason, you don't like matching patterns. That's when I say you, I'm meaning ladies. A lot of ladies don't like matching patterns
It can work.
on
It just
top of
depends.
patterns, but I'll wear a plaid with a polka dot or a plaid with a paisley, no problem. And really, it's just I'll admit it, usually a week in advance, I'm laying out the outfit, trying to figure it out and put it together. And I always do it that way because there might be a pair of sneaks that I want to get, a pair of J's or something that I want to get to match up to it. But just make sure everything works. And that's pretty much what goes into it. Lay it on the bed. It's just like before you go to the first day of school. So for me, I get 16. And if I'm fortunate with the playoffs, I get 19 days where I could have the first day of school, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, your girls dress you very well, and I know you have a hand in it. All right. Well, Turron, it has been a pleasure speaking with you, and
Definitely.
I appreciate you joining me. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, you on Twitter at @TDavenport_NFL. I have a weekly, two shows on 102.5 The Game, which is ESPN Nashville. We have, if you search Talking with TD on Google Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, there's a live show on Friday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time that I have with Nate Washington, a former Steelers and more importantly, former Titans receiver. So that plays here in Nashville. You can find that on Talking with TD podcast platforms. And then the show Talking with TD is one that I started a long time ago, and it's just interviewing different players. It's my way of giving breakdowns for what happens or what will happen. So that's another thing. Definitely go to ESPN.com, click on the NFL team page, and go to Titans. All of my work shows up there, and even short push notifications I put up there. For example, every Wednesday I have a segment that I do. It's a video called Whiteboard Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And I like to take the X's and O's and break it down, but make it digestible for everyone. And I enjoy doing that. So every week I'll draw something up. This week it was supposed to be Steelers week. I did one on Eric Ebron and the red zone and how they like to use him. And then also it was actually a double bonus because you get the I drew up their blitz package too and how the Titans could attack that. So that's what I do. Try to give you everything that you could want as a Titans fan or even just a football fan. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so make sure you're following Turron. He has great content. He also played the game, so he's coming from that perspective. The man knows what he's talking about. So once again, thank you for joining Another Side of the Story. Until next time, I'm Carita Parks.